welcome to Butterflies of Wisdom, everyone. Today, not only do you have me, you have Mr. James, and I believe Mr. James has CP, and he's been raising money for kids with cerebral palsy, and it's an interesting process raising money for kids with cerebral palsy. So without further ado, I'm going to let Mr. James take it away.
I like how you called me Mr. James because my last name is Italian and it's very hard to pronounce. It's Lacerenza. And actually, I do have cerebral palsy, but I've been raising money for more than 10 years now, and awareness and access and acceptance for children and adults with muscular dystrophy. So you know, it happens. You know, people mix the two disabilities up, but you know, that's what I've been doing, among other things.
Okay, so why are you now raising money for a completely different disability other than your own? I mean, CP is tough enough, but MS, my God, that's a whole nother kettle fish. But why are you now raising money for MS when you're supposed to be helping yourself and trying to keep yourself afloat with CP?
Well, I'll try to tell you the short version of the story, but my short versions are usually kind of long. So feel free to stop me in between, you know. So anyway, it's muscular dystrophy, and people confuse muscular dystrophy, MD, and multiple sclerosis, MS, all the time. Again, don't worry about it. I got this covered. So I was born with cerebral palsy, and which is what you have. A matter of factly, I don't even know what specific type of cerebral palsy I have. You know, I don't remember it off the top of my head, and I never went to a neurologist to figure it out. Like my parents wrote down, you know, the doctor wrote down cerebral palsy with no other explanation. So, anywho, I'm guessing that most people know what cerebral palsy is. It's basically a congenitive, I think, brain injury. I don't even want to call it an injury. You know this better than I do, Wynn.
Hold on 1 second, James. I'll take over from there. CP is a lack of oxygen to the brain at birth or lack of oxygen to the brain as a young child. Continue, James.
Okay, thank you, because, you know, it's funny that you got confused because I got confused for a minute there. So, I was born with cerebral palsy, and it only affects my ability to walk. I mean, I can use crutches, and I can hold on to things and take a few steps, and I'm able to hold on to the treadmill and go work out on that. But otherwise, I'm a typical person. And so what happened was when I was growing up, there weren't many television shows on in the 1980s and 1990s that had people with disabilities on them, not just physical disabilities and visible disabilities, but invisible disabilities too. So basically the only two shows that I watched, I know there was Facts of Life and other things, other kind of sitcoms, but the only kinds of shows I really liked as a kid, were, you know, that had disabled people on them or people with disabilities were game shows. And the reason why game shows had people with disabilities on was not, you know, for a feel-good kind of thing. It's because, you know, the contestants could play the games well. And the other kind of show when I was growing up that had people with disabilities on that I could relate to was telethons. Now, telethons, you know, today have gone away because, you know, many people with disabilities view them as offensive. And I can understand that viewpoint. Some of the things
I can understand that viewpoint too myself. I can understand that viewpoint to myself.
You know, some of the telethons were way too depressing, and they only focused on, you know, the medical side of things, and you know, and over time, you know, people in the disability rights community began to ask those charities to try and include, more positive outlooks in those profiles. And for example, the United Cerebral Palsy Telethon actually in the 1980s and 90s really started to talk about employment for people with disabilities and other things like accessibility. The thing is, muscular dystrophy is a disability, and it's also a genetic disease. Now, that's where the muscular dystrophy telethon kind of gets a little controversial and confusing. I watched all of those telethons when I was a kid. I didn't feel sorry for any of those kids. I just watched because a lot of celebrities showed up on them. And because, I could relate to the people on the show. So, making a long story even longer, I used to watch the muscular dystrophy telethon every Labor Day, and Jerry Lewis was still is a very famous actor and comedian. He's 91 years old now. But for 60 years, he basically worked with children and adults with muscular dystrophy, and for 45 of those years, he hosted a national telethon. So while I didn't like everything that I saw on the telethon, I always try to look for the positive things. And one of the positive things was muscular dystrophy summer camp. I had never, really heard of camps for people with disabilities, as a kid. I mean, I know Easter Seals had a camp, but that was like 2 hours from my house.
And they still do.
Yeah, they still do.
They still have Easter Seals camp.
But by the time I was like a 10, 12-year-old kid, like the Easter Seals camp was 2 hours away. There wasn't a camp for children with cerebral palsy. So what I did was I went to a traditional camp, where there are people that are not disabled and there are people that are disabled. We had a few that were disabled, but I fit right in, even though it was hard to get around, and walk on the nature trails with my crutches and things like that. And eventually, actually, just as a quick side note, I convinced the local Boys and Girls Club, who was sponsoring the camp, to make it more accessible. So I guess even though I don't consider myself an activist or an advocate, I guess I possess those qualities from an early age. So anyway, this is a long story. So I saw the muscular dystrophy summer camp on the muscular dystrophy telethon, and that was the only telethon that was left, in the early 2000s. And so I said, well, all these people are raising money for research. And that's great, because there are a lot of kinds of muscular dystrophy. Some kinds affect children, some kinds affect adults. Life expectancy can be varied. It's a very complicated group of disabilities. But in any case, I said, research is great. I don't have a problem with research, but I want to do something that is immediate and that can, do more than just heal with medicine. And so that's when I decided in 2005, after volunteering at the telethon for a few years prior, I decided that I was going to start raising money for my local muscular dystrophy camp. And it just has snowballed from there.
Okay, so that's why now that makes sense. Once you get bitten by the telethon bug, you can't stop.
Well, yeah. It's not really that I got sucked in or bugged in, but I know what you mean. Like the entertainment, like I said, was a big factor in keeping my attention as a kid. But actually, like I said, I didn't feel sorry for those kids. What I felt after those telethons were, what can I do besides just, hoping that they find research treatments? And so when I heard about the camp, I said, why don't we just start raising money for that? And so basically, for the next 5 or 6 years, we had an MDA camp, relatively close to my house, about an hour or so away. And then the local MDA office that was in that area, that serves our area, closed. So instead of, like trying to go to Long Island, which is 2 hours away in New York, I'm in the suburbs of New York City, but I'm actually in Connecticut technically. What I did was, as luck would have it, the year that MDA camp got relocated and moved from Connecticut to Long Island, or whatever happened to our camp, it actually moved from New York in Rockland County to Long Island. You know what I mean? My area to somewhere else. The year that happened, a different organization, the Jet Foundation for Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy, just happened to open Camp Promise in Connecticut at the Easter Seals campsite up in Hebron that we were talking about earlier. And so I said, this is great because not only can kids go to Camp Promise, but there is no age limit. So we have, when I say we, I'm talking about Camp Promise, we have campers that are 20, 25, I think maybe even 30 years old. And yes, there are girl campers. So it's really wonderful.
That is really wonderful. And my next question, okay, so you're not so into the cerebral palsy, United Cerebral Palsy end of it. You're more into the MSMD end of it.
Well, it's not that I'm not into it. The other thing that I should explain is that UCP did not have, the local chapter was in Bridgeport, which is, again, an hour and a half from where I am, and the other local chapter is Manhattan, which is an hour from where I am. So, we're like in a unusual geographic area. Stamford, Connecticut is the city where I live. We're right between New York City and Hartford, and in between is New Haven. So it's just one of those unusual, weird kind of geographic locations. So it's not that I don't care about UCP. I very much do. In fact, the only girlfriend I had, we were in a relationship for 5 years. Get this, she has cerebral palsy, a lovely lady, and she has a new boyfriend, by the way. But we met initially. Our first date was the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon local phone center here in Stamford. So yeah.
John, I personally don't think United Cerebral Palsy, and people know this, who are listening to my podcast, I don't think United Cerebral Palsy is doing enough awareness. That's why I'm banging the drum as loud as I can for cerebral palsy and for all other physical disabilities, because these national chapters and these local chapters are so into research that it's not even funny. And
right. And I'll let you finish. I'll let you finish in a second. All I wanted to say was good for you. Okay, continue.
How I was going to ask you, how do you feel about that when United Cerebral Palsy is doing so much research that us as advocates, we have to bang the drum on literally Winn-Dixie's website. Winn-Dixie is a grocery store back east, and I have a friend who's trying to get Winn-Dixie's site handicapped friendly now, who's legally blind with cerebral palsy. But why do you think that United Cerebral Palsy, James, from your perspective, is doing so much research on a disability that cannot be cured? CP cannot be cured, nor can MS, nor can MD.
Well, okay. First of all, let me just you'll understand what I'm saying. So first of all, it's not that muscular dystrophy can't be cured or even treated. Muscular dystrophy is different because it's a disability, but it's also like the muscles in your body get weaker and weaker and weaker as the years go on. And it's not necessarily like many adults with muscular dystrophy, they're happy the way they are. Many kids with muscular dystrophy are happy the way they are, but they also understand that treatments could, make their lives a little easier, let's say, to deal with tasks of daily living. So in terms of, muscular dystrophy, I'm not speaking for every single person with muscular dystrophy, but that's why the research end of those telethons was so big. And I agree, there should have been less research on the muscular dystrophy side of things. Now, in terms of what you told me about United Cerebral Palsy, I hadn't heard about that. But if that's true, cerebral palsy is different. It's not going to get worse. You're born with it, and that it just stays that way, pretty much. And maybe some people are able to improve their walking or whatever, but it doesn't deteriorate. It doesn't get worse. You know what I mean? So I don't know why UCP would be so into research at this point.
Well, the last time I dealt with UCP, they go, no way, we're not. This was actually for the Konai Net. They go, no way, we're not sponsoring you. We're more into the research end of it than we're into the awareness end of it. And I'm like,
wow.
Yeah, you can research to, well, James is saying well, because you can research to a blue in the face, but CP can't get worse, and it's not a condition that you can pass on to your kids. If you want to have kids, those kids should be able to body.
Right. And you bring up another important point, and then we'll get back to cerebral palsy for a second. Whereas with muscular dystrophy, it's a condition, a disability, whatever word you like to call, that can be passed down from generation to generation. So yeah, unlike cerebral palsy, which usually is not. So yeah, that is really strange. Like I do follow the New York City local chapter. Going back to the other thing you were talking about, I do follow the New York City chapter of UCP, but they even changed their name in New York City, UCP, to something, I think, not adaptability, but some sort of new name that I forgot. So yeah, actually, now that I think about it, you're right. The New York City chapter seems really on board with other things besides research, like access and acceptance. But I guess where you are in Denver, or wherever this chapter is, because you said it was back east, right?
I think we contacted at the time the national chapter out in California, and we were trying to sponsorships for the Konai Man, and they go, nope, we're into research, and then UCP Kansas City approached us to do a race, and my teammate goes, no, we're not doing that because UCP won't support us. They didn't support us at the beginning. So why a local chapter would heavily support us, and why not the national chapter? And I find that...
Well, in that case, now that you put it like that, the only thing that I can think of, and I'm no expert on this, but the only thing I can think of is that the national organization is not in touch with the local chapter, and the local chapter is not, doing the same. In other words, they're not on the same page, so to speak.
No, they're not talking to each other.
And it's if this makes any sense, that larger chapter in Los Angeles, I'm happy that the ones in Kansas City, didn't want to do research and things, but it saddens me that the folks you contacted in Los Angeles at UCP were not as acceptive, even though you didn't work with either chapter. That's really stunning to me.
Yeah, you're right. It's UCP out of Los Angeles, and at the time, they didn't want us to raise awareness by doing the Konai event. Now, I don't know if that's different nowadays. I should probably call the UCP Los Angeles chapter and ask again if they would do something on this podcast. But it just saddens me that, and saddens you, James, too, that UCP is less into awareness of the disability than they are into research of the disability.
Yeah, and by the way, now that I'm thinking of it, I do believe that UCP has a national office in Washington, D.C., so you may want to call them, too.
Yeah, I will. And then the week, that's going to be my homework, you guys. That's going to be my homework to follow up with
I'll pass along the number for you after we get off the air.
Yeah, just text me the number, and I'll even stick it in the show notes, you guys, so you can call on my behalf and say hello. And
yeah,
say
and
hello,
at least
you could,
and at least look into this, you know.
Yeah, because I have a lot of able-bodied listeners who know I have cerebral palsy, who know I interview people with cerebral palsy all the time, and so we now need, as advocates, to get UCP on board and say, hello, quit doing the research and quit investing in the research. Do a 50-50 split between research and awareness.
What you said is absolutely perfect. Talk about perfect, you know, in a world that is not perfect at all for any of us, of any ability level. But you got it. You nailed it. I do think that nonprofit charities, which I volunteer for, like I volunteer for the camp, and they're part of a nonprofit charity, they need to strike an equal balance. And when I say balance, I don't mean like balance like falling down. You know what I mean? Like balance like an equal percentage, like you just said. That's a better word. They need to strike an equal percentage between, you know, maybe 20% research, 80% awareness and acceptance. You know, or whatever the ratio is. It at least has to be 50-50 to me. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, go ahead. I was just going to talk more about the camp, but, you know, go ahead.
Well, I was going to get to that. Now, is MS and MD doing, my grandmother actually had MD now that I think of it. So I am fully aware, and my aunt has a slight version of MD, so now I'm fully aware of it. Thank you, James, for bringing it to my attention again. And
no problem.
No problem. But I'm wondering, does MS and MD do enough awareness that you are satisfied with?
Well, to be honest, I do have at least one friend that I know of that has multiple sclerosis, which is MS. I have not looked into how much awareness MS is doing. No, actually, I have more than one friend with MS actually, but one just came to my mind. But I will tell you that the Muscular Dystrophy Association, MDA, they used to do the telethons, and it used to be very gloomy and dark, and in terms of the attitude. But I will tell you that within the last 2 years or so, a couple years after the last Jerry Lewis telethon, even though they still primarily do just medical research and summer camps, I will tell you that if you go on their YouTube page, their new motto is Live Unlimited. And that's a good, I don't want to say step, but that's a good sign that they have finally begun to fully embrace life with muscular dystrophy and living with it. I also want to tell you that a very good thing is there are local nonprofits. Oh, my phone is ringing. You still there, Wynn?
Yeah.
Okay, my cell phone was ringing. I had no idea why. Thought it was maybe we had lost the connection. I will tell you that there are other nonprofits like the Jet Foundation for Duchenne muscular dystrophy that do strike that equal percentage between research and camp. And now, just using Jet Foundation as an example, they have begun to help assist families of children with muscular dystrophy obtain accessible vans or a grant for accessible vans. So that really helps too. So I don't know, like, if the National Multiple Sclerosis Society is doing enough in terms of awareness and acceptance, but MDA has started to make that on the national level, and certainly the smaller muscular dystrophy charities, when I say small, I mean they're not national, but like, for example, there's so many kinds of muscular dystrophy, but like the Duchenne charities are beginning to embrace the society model of disability, and even the ALS charities, because ALS is a related muscular dystrophy. Until very recently, until, the Ice Bucket Challenge, truth be told, money was needed for research because we didn't know a lot about what causes that particular form of muscular dystrophy, ALS. And so, the outlook of people with ALS that I'm friends with on Facebook, I'm friends with many of them in the ALS Facebook family, they call it, the outlook for them is starting to improve, even though ALS is a very serious disability,
And I was just going to mention the Ice Bucket Challenge. The Ice Bucket Challenge happened, I don't know.
In 2014.
Okay, so thank you, James, because I couldn't remember the summer it happened. In 2014, the Ice Bucket Challenge went viral. No, Miss Wynn didn't participate in the Ice Bucket Challenge, but I know plenty of people that did. And so the Ice Bucket Challenge literally went viral because of the story of a mom who was trying to raise money for her child who had muscular dystrophy, and I believe it was Duchenne's. Correct me if I'm wrong, James, and just go look it up on YouTube. I believe the videos are still there for those of you who are listening to this in a foreign country and don't know what the Ice Bucket Challenge was or is. And I think that someone has to come up with something like that again to do more research for these debilitating disabilities.
Yeah, like for what I call the more progressive disabilities, like muscular dystrophy and ALS and things like childhood cancer. Like the good news is with childhood cancer, like 30, 40, 50 years ago, when St. Jude Children's Research Hospital was founded, most of the kids passed away. Today, 4 out of 5 kids live through the first, round of battling cancer at least, and many of them are now adults, actually. So that's fantastic. So it's not that nobody in the disability community is against research. It pretty much every person in the disability community is different, in the disability rights community is different, but nobody's against research. Basically, what I don't want to say what they're against or what we're against or what I'm against, but it seems like people in general that have disabilities are against research for disabilities that do not cause, early death. I couldn't put it any other way. Whereas, something like muscular dystrophy or lupus or that sort of thing, they may not be completely for it, but they understand it. Like the best way I can put it is this. Some people have, disabilities like cerebral palsy or autism that stay the same, once you get it or you have it. And then there are disabilities that, like lupus or muscular dystrophy or multiple sclerosis, that can get worse. So the way I look at it is, and I tell this to my friends, I tell this to strangers on Twitter who are part of the disability community, I tell it to anybody I know or that'll want to listen or read or whatever. I say, look, if a person with ALS or muscular dystrophy or lupus or anything, if they say to me, you know what, James, I could really use a treatment, or you know what, James, I really hope for a cure, I say go for that. I support you. At the same time, if a person with autism says to me, I don't need to be cured. I don't need to be treated. I'm happy the way I am. I say go for that too. I support you and however you feel. And it's felt like for me, because I'll be honest with you, Wynn, I wasn't into the disability rights culture until this past year's election when Donald Trump said the things he said, and that's a whole other thing. But I wanted to find out.
That's a whole other podcast and stuff I have.
Right. But I wanted to find out what other people with disabilities on the internet were thinking, and that's when I discovered all of these wonderful people that, we have a variety of disabilities. It also means we have a variety of opinions over what we want to be in terms of everything, including medicine. But my point is, I'm supportive of everybody. So if people, feel that they need to have medical treatments, I'm with you. If you feel you're happy the way you are, I'm with you either way. And let me just say, before you ask another question, I have to tell you, most of the people that I know with Duchenne even have told me, and and the people I know are 20, 25, 30, although I certainly do, interact with the parents too that have younger children. Most of them tell me the same basic message. Some of us may be hopeful of treatments and cures and all that stuff for Duchenne, but you know what? We're living life to the fullest that we can with what we have right now. And I think that's very important for people listening to this to know and to understand. Just because a person has Duchenne or even ALS, it no longer means what it used to mean 50 or 60 years ago in the mindset that, that's it, my life is over. No. A lot of these teenagers, 20-somethings, 30-somethings with Duchenne and 30, 40, 50-year-olds, whatever they are, whatever age they are with ALS, a lot of them just enjoy life. And yes, they are aware, keenly aware of, possible health complications when winter comes and everybody comes down with colds and flus because of, respiratory muscles getting weakened in their bodies with Duchenne and ALS. But you know what? They just want to be accepted. And that's why, in addition to the awareness and the acceptance, I also really am pushing for access for everybody, just getting around and getting employed. And, put it this way, we all have a very short period of time on this earth to live, no matter, what we are or who we are or what we, have in terms of abilities. So, you just got to go for it now. And that's what I learned from everybody in the disability community, including those that don't identify, as part of the community, but that do have, Duchenne or ALS or lupus or what have you. One other thing, and then I promise I'll let you ask a question. Not everyone that has a disability identifies as disabled or as part of the disability rights community. And you know what? To me, that's okay. There's, everybody is different. And everybody is not going to do the same thing at the same time. For a long time, until last year's election, I wasn't even interested in politics. And I'm not a super fan of politics now, because I take in 20 or 30 minutes of news from a variety of different sources, not just TV, but online and et cetera every day. But after about 20 or 30 minutes, I've had enough. So point being, I'm not into politics, but unfortunately, politics intersect in everything. That's why we have, a phrase called intersectionality, where all of these different, issues, be it, jobs or accessibility or transportation, they all intersect, and they all circle back around to decisions that elected officials made from all sides, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, third party, whatever. So, but again, no one forced me to get into disability rights. I still don't feel like I'm an activist. What I feel I am is disabled. I feel like I'm a proud human being that loves other human beings, and I just want to try to make people aware of the issues that face all people with disabilities, and for them to accept us as human beings, and for us to have access to jobs and open, no more boundaries in the streets physically and all of that stuff. So it's actually been, every family has its fights and its squabbles, and I'll be honest, things on Twitter within the disability rights community can get pretty heated at times. But we're all striving for the same thing, and that's just to be accepted by everybody. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's also nothing wrong with, not wanting to get into all of that kind of discussion online because, we have lives to lead too. So all I'm saying is I'm for everybody,
James, you said that so eloquently. My God, I think you stole my brain on that one. I am a big advocate in the disabled rights community. Do I get into the politics end of it? No. Do I get into equal opportunity employment? Yes. Do I get into education? Yes. But I agree with you. I'm for everyone. If people, even though I believe in alternative health, if people want the latest medical treatment for cerebral palsy, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't mean to use a slogan, but it's a free country, at least, until anything else changes, do what makes you, I think that's a life lesson I've learned. Do what makes you happy. And I know that sometimes, you cannot do what makes you happy all day, every day, like every single day of your life. But if you can find something that you are passionate about, like I am with Camp Promise and the muscular dystrophy camp and ALS and getting to know these people beyond just, medical diagnoses and getting to know them as people. If you're into something equally as passionate, just unleash that passion on the world because it's probably going to help a lot of people.
Thank you, James. And this is the whole point of Butterflies of Wisdom, to get people motivated and to get people passionate about something that they are passionate about. Geez, I think you should be my marketer for Butterflies of Wisdom. Truly, I do, because you said that so eloquently, and I can't thank you enough for saying that so eloquently. And before
thank you. I was going to say, go ahead.
Well, before I let you go, where can people find you? I know they can find you on Twitter.
Where can people find me? I'm everywhere on social media. I am an admitted social media junkie, even though I do have seasonal jobs, and I'm starting a new job next week part-time, working for a friend.
Well, congratulations on that.
Say what?
Congratulations on
that.
Thank
you. It's just, it's very hot here in New York, and I guess some of the sweat dripped into my ear, and I couldn't, but now I hear you. So thank you for that. But basically, no, I'm everywhere on social media, but the easiest way people can get a hold of me is probably on Twitter. My handle is @JamesOnWheels. So the pun there is fully intended. I also have a Facebook page, which I completely forget the name of because, I didn't write that down.
You don't use it, do you?
So you can post that up there. But basically, just, basically ask Wynn. If you need me, ask Wynn. She'll tell you where to find me.
Ask Wynn. I love it. Ask Wynn. Well, that being said, Wynn has the answers for James. I will connect to you guys. I will also put all of James's information in the show notes. And as he said, he's very active on Twitter. That's where I found him. And God knows what I was looking at to find you, but I found James on Wheels, and your Twitter profile seems interesting to me. So I said, do you want to be interviewed? And you graciously said yes, James, and I didn't realize that you had cerebral palsy. Oops. I thought you had MS OMG, because you are now raising so much money for that disability. I didn't realize you were intelligent with cerebral palsy.
Right, and just really quickly, when you go to my profile, ironically, a lot of people with disabilities have strong opinions about Jerry Lewis because of things he said and the way he produced the telethon, back in the day. But you know something? I met Jerry Lewis in 2012, 2 years after the last telethon, and I got to ask him a question at one of his appearances, and the question was, Jerry, what can I do to help not just people with muscular dystrophy, but people in general? And guess what? He actually went backstage. He went looking for me in the audience while I went backstage, and he finally found me a half an hour later, believe it or not, and he said in our brief 5-minute conversation, I don't remember all of it, but I do remember this. He said, in terms of helping people with disabilities or people in general, trust your gut, surround yourself with positive people, and you'll go far and do very, very well in life. And I know that people have strong opinions about Jerry, both negative and positive, but I got to tell you, meeting him was the highlight of my life. It was the happiest day of my life, no question. So I'm always going to be a fan of Jerry Lewis's comedy movies, even though I may not, love everything he did on the telethon. I really do owe at least a little bit of my passion to that guy, because without him, I wouldn't have learned about the camps, and I wouldn't have found not just him as a role model, but other children and adults with muscular dystrophy who I viewed over the years as role models too. So something good did come out of it for me, and I know for some people there wasn't much good, but like Jerry basically said on so many telethons, you got to make the best with what you got. Now, he didn't say it that exact way, but that's the idea he was trying to get across. So anyway, I know I told a little extra story, but yeah, that was surreal. Matter of fact, when I came up to the microphone to talk to him, he said, Hi, sweetheart, which I wasn't expecting. He goes, hi, sweetheart, what's your name? I said, James Lacerenza. He said, are you Italian? I said, yes. He said, I can smell your garlic breath from here.
Oh, God. Oh, God, I love it.
I knew I was getting set up from a joke by Jerry, because he used to be a famous comedian with Dean Martin back in the 50s, but I loved it. I loved it, and the audience loved it. And then just to meet him, after the show, and for him to give me that advice, it was just great. And I know we're going way over time, but I also met so many people on that telethon, because eventually I got to be on a couple of the last Jerry Lewis telethons. And I got to tell you, the New York local team, they were fantastic. Nobody felt sorry for anybody. Even the profile pieces on the New York local, side of things with the telethon, very upbeat and optimistic. I'm still friends with so many people from the New York City portion of that telethon, and Tony Orlando, famous pop singer in the 1970s, even had a sister with cerebral palsy. So it all comes full circle, I've met so many great people with muscular dystrophy through that show, and then through the camps, and now through Camp Promise. It's just, what a life I've had.
The host has joined the conference.
So anyway, I know that I ramble, but what a life I've had, Wynn.
Well, James, I'm going to make sure this is recorded, and so because my phone died on us, the call cut out, and so I had to call back in. But I'm going to make this a 2-part episode, and I think what you said was really astounding as to what we can all do. Just be accepting of each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really that hard a concept, Wynn, but a lot of times, you know what I think it is? It's not just the politics going on. People are stressed from just living their own lives. And so sometimes that energy that they want to be positive, that they want to bring out positively in the world, gets unfortunately harnessed in the opposite direction. So, yeah, I think that acceptance, just not of diagnoses, but of people with disabilities as people, that's something that should have happened a long time ago. I'm glad it's starting to happen now with shows like Speechless and other things. And it's, I know it's going to continue. I don't have to say I hope it's going to, I know it's going to continue. It may take us, another decade or so as a community, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
And James, I'm just going to hit the recording button so you can repeat what you just said to me, because I want that recorded, and I'm going to make this a 2-part episode, because what you're saying will impact my community like this no tomorrow. So hang on.
Yeah, sure.